Welcome back, everyone, to the second season of Making Waves, the show from the Chicago Maritime Museum all about our city's past, present, and future on the waterways. I'm Madeline Crispell, the museum's curator. With me, as always, is Sari Breslin, the museum's education director.
Thank you, Madeline. Our guest lighting the way this month is Donald J. Terras, director of the Lighthouse Park District. Don has worked in the administration of landmark property at a broad range of private and public educational institutions, including the Evanston History Center's Dawes House Museum, the Department of Anthropology at the Milwaukee Public Museum, and as guest curator in the Department of Special Exhibits at the John G. Shedd Aquarium in Chicago. Mr. Terras is Chief Administrator of the Lighthouse Park District, a unit of local government in Evanston, Illinois, and manages daily affairs of the district and also the district's operated Grosse Point Light Station Museum under the title of Lighthouse Keeper.
The Grosse Point Lighthouse structure was designated a National Historic Landmark by the United States Department of the Interior on the strength of a nomination submitted by Mr. Terras, and is one of the few lighthouses in the country to have obtained this designation. Mr. Terras's work has been recognized with the Marjorie Perkins Award from the Evanston Preservation Commission and the Richard H. Driehaus Award from the Landmarks Preservation Council of Illinois. Both awards are the highest possible honor accorded locally within the state of Illinois, recognizing outstanding achievement in preserving and interpreting Grosse Point Lighthouse as a historic site museum. Mr. Terras has also received the Professional of the Year Award from the Illinois Association of Museums for his work that includes research, interpretation, adaptive use preservation planning, publishing, and teaching museum studies at both the undergraduate and graduate college level. Nationally, Mr. Terras has served on the American Lighthouse Coordinating Committee, a 12-member task force that established a National Lighthouse Museum in New York City. He is also past president of the American Lighthouse Council, a national lighthouse preservation and education oversight agency, now an affiliate of the U.S. Lighthouse Society. Mr. Terras is a recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award from Evanston for his many years of exceptional stewardship at Grosse Point Lighthouse, and has also received the American Lighthouse Council's F. Ross Holland Distinguished Service Award. Mr. Terras's most celebrated publication is Grosse Point Lighthouse, Landmark to Maritime History and Culture, though he has published and contributed to several others. Mr. Terras, welcome to Making Waves.
Thank you very much for having me here.
We're thrilled to have you.
That was quite an introduction. How does one decide, one day I think I want to be a lighthouse keeper?
I didn't decide that. Oh. It was kind of decided for me by my actions, but I have a specialization, an advanced degree in anthropology with a specialization in material culture studies, and I worked at the Evanston History Center very early on in my career, and the job in Evanston at the Lighthouse opened up, and I thought that this might be curious, being curator of one artifact rather than several artifacts or a whole collection of artifacts. So I decided to apply for the job, and lo and behold, I got it.
Nice. And you, I think, are the longest lighthouse keeper of this particular lighthouse that there has ever been?
I'm the longest heritage lighthouse keeper. We draw a designation between the federally appointed lighthouse keepers and those that came after. But having said that, I'm the person who has held the title keeper for the history of Grosse Point Lighthouse.
Oh, I think we have a nice picture of its the lighthouse.
One of the earliest images, right?
Yeah, this particular image that you see here is the official image that's in the National Archives of a U.S. lighthouse establishment at Grosse Point in 1873.
Wow.
You can see from this depiction that there wasn't very much around in Evanston at that point in time. It did grow rapidly, but here you have a timestamp on what the lighthouse looked like. As I said, a depiction in 1873.
Now, 1873, not a year that will jump out to a lot of people as having a maritime historical significance, but there's something happens, 13 years earlier that contributes to the building of a lighthouse there.
Yeah, well, the real catalyst to having a lighthouse at Grosse Point was a shipwreck tragedy called the Lady Elgin disaster. Many viewers of your program have probably recognized that. And it took place in 1860, but as we were talking about before taping here, there was a little conflict called the Civil War that intervened, and the lighthouse never did get constructed until 1873. So that affirms the date of construction. Interestingly enough, although it was constructed in 1873, it didn't start operating until 1874, March 1st of 1874. It's the beginning of the shipping season.
That makes sense.
So you just had the anniversary, March 1st. There you go.
Now, I grew up on the North Shore, and I think anybody who's spent time driving up and down the North Shore, for our audience who spent time, sailing up and down the North Shore, that's a landmark that you can't miss. We've all seen the Grosse Point Lighthouse, but we have a photo, which is a version of the Grosse Point Lighthouse I found interesting to see. Can you tell us what's going on in this image?
Okay.
I thought it was on fire.
Now, this is a photograph of one of the fog signal buildings in operation at Grosse Point. There was actually steam-powered machinery that created a signal in times when there was fog. It was a horn, and
a very loud horn.
Loud horn. Here in this particular picture, you see the steam coming from the horn, operated very much like an old steam train whistle. It was very loud, as I said, and was a point of controversy for many years amongst some pretty affluent people that lived in the North Evanston area.
I was gonna say, anybody who spent time driving up around in Evanston, this is a lighthouse in the middle of a neighborhood. People live right across the street and right next to it.
That's correct.
Did people mind at the time that there was a navigational aid being built in their neighborhood?
Very much so. As I was doing the research on the book Grosse Point Lighthouse, I went to the National Archives and saw lots and lots of letters to the federal government from these affluent people that lived in the area, asking them to discontinue the operation of the fog signal buildings. But of course they couldn't. The shipping business was booming at that point in time.
Right,
and,
of course.
they
Our
needed the
viewers will
signal.
know Chicago was the busiest port in the world.
Yes.
I mean, by the 1880s.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah.
Now,
I'm just going to ask, do most lighthouses have these fog buildings?
Most lighthouses have some type of signaling device in times of inclement weather.
Okay.
And because Grosse Point was landlocked, it's known as a light station, which the difference is that there are multiple buildings involved. As you can see here,
we have a
from this
photo of
particular graphic.
how those buildings evolved.
Right. This is a depiction, a government depiction of Grosse Point. The reservation, each one of these lighthouses was placed on technically what was called a reservation. And this dates from the early part of the 1900s, and it shows you how the site had grown from what we saw in the initial photograph. It's a overhead of the reservation. You can see buildings, the two fog signal buildings. We saw the fog signal building in operation before. Well, that was constructed in 1880, some 7 years after the main construction of the building, and some other structures that were there. There was a fuel supply facility that was constructed in 1900. And there's a little black box, that looks like a little black box there on the close to the dotted line on the bottom. Nobody's quite sure what that was. I'm of the opinion that it was probably an outhouse.
Sure.
That's my first thought. Why is it called Grosse Point Lighthouse?
Well, Grosse Point was the name of the piece of land that jutted out from what is now Evanston into Lake Michigan. It was first noted or charted by the early French explorers, Marquette in particular, Jacques Marquette, and in his diary on their way to the Chicago River, he makes note of having to land on the point because of flows of ice that they ran into in November. And he called it Grosse Point, and the name stuck. So it's been Grosse Point since that time period.
So along with Terre Haute and Prairie du Chien, another great French pronounced Midwestern word.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we take a look at a map, and we have a map here, you can see why this is something of a natural place to put a lighthouse. But tell us what we're looking at in this map.
Well, this is a very good depiction of the shoreline of Illinois, approximately 60-mile shoreline that Illinois has with Lake Michigan, and the major navigational aids into the port of Chicago, which of course at this time was the Chicago River. Up at the top you see Waukegan, then you see Grosse Point, and it really shows you why it was a point. It didn't quite go out into the lake like you would expect a point that you might see on the East Coast.
And it's not Cape Cod.
It's not Cape Cod, that's for sure. But nevertheless, it is a prominent feature. It was used as a natural landmark even before a lighthouse was there. But it helped guide mariners coming into Chicago Harbor from the northern reaches of Lake Michigan. And south of that, you had, of course, Calumet, and you had some other lights that were very important on the waterworks cribs, feeding water into the bustling city of Chicago.
Now, I know at least that, before I got my job at the Chicago Maritime Museum, when I thought about lighthouses, I was mostly thinking about New England. But Lake Michigan, Chicago, our area has a really rich history of navigational aids. And I appreciate you walking us through this history with the Lady Elgin, because that's something that you can come down to the Chicago Maritime Museum and see a whole exhibit about. Now, there are probably a lot of challenges that come with a National Historic Landmark that's right on the lakefront. What have been the challenges with preserving this landmark?
Well, just being on the lakefront, it's subject to all the elements that you can imagine blowing off the lake, the snow, the wind, the ice. All of those take its toll on the light tower. Not so much the keeper's quarters, which is attached to the light tower by an above-ground passageway, but the light tower itself is subject to quite a bit of of deterioration because of that.
So we are both humid, wet summers and the really cold, freezing winters.
Exactly. And it always takes a little bit of preservation, at least a reconstruction or conservation. We have to have the light tower recoded approximately every 15 to 20 years. Here you see a photograph of a reconstruction of the north wing of the lighthouse that was taken off for a reason I was never able to find, but it was gone, and we do have the original blueprints for the site, and we're able to reconstruct this north wing to the specifications.
Wow. And this looks like a serious undertaking.
Yeah.
It was a serious undertaking at the time. It was an undertaking I felt that helped put the building back together again. Technically it's an Italianate style. It's bisymmetrical, and not having the north wing there threw the symmetry off. And I'm kind of a nut for symmetry, and I thought to myself, I gotta have this back on there.
Now, before we move to our wonderful next image that shows the beautiful product of this restoration, can you tell us, is that a common style of lighthouse? Are there a lot of Italianate revival lighthouses?
Well, it depends on the era that they were constructed in. This happened to be constructed in an era when there were a lot of Italianate kind of looks to the building. Here you can see the way the building looked back in 1920 and the way it looks today. Due to the restoration efforts, you can see the north wing.
And that it looks like the exact same structure.
Great
That's
job.
incredible.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
Renovation,
And that is the whole
reconstruction.
idea behind restoration, and having a object, whether it be in a museum collection or whether it be out in the open like this. I think that's the object of both what you do as a curator at the Chicago Maritime Museum and what we all do that are in the profession.
Funding for this must have been a real chore.
Well, I call it chores.
Chores. It's still is.
It took much more than one bit of funding. We have a fundraiser every year, but it takes the amount of money that we get in is not sufficient, and it takes a lot more than that. Help from the federal government, from the state government.
And just briefly, if anybody at home is feeling called to help with the fundraising efforts for preserving one of the great landmarks of Illinois, how do people give money to the lighthouse?
Oh,
Well,
there
you can contact me by email at grossepointlighthouse.net is the website, and it has contact information on the website. If you haven't seen our website, if you're
Great
at all
website.
interested in lighthouses, it's a fabulous website.
With a virtual tour.
With two virtual tours,
Yeah,
I'm
two
told.
virtuals.
So
great
I
website.
emphasize that.
In that photo, we saw this nice big green lawn in front of the lighthouse in both images.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty area to walk around, right? I can attest. There's the wildflower flower
Yeah.
garden. Do you want to tell people a little bit? What do they see if they come visit the outside of the lighthouse?
Well, we talked earlier, not on tape here, about using exterior signage to get across a message and educate some of the public that might not be able to get in to see the lighthouse. And I broke it down into three areas: the history of the lighthouse, of course, is the largest exterior interpretive sign that we have. The Garden Club of Evanston has been instrumental in their support, and they have established a wildflower garden there that dates back to 1937.
Wow.
There's within a month it'll be a beautiful place to to see when the wildflowers really start coming out in their peak. And then there's the point itself and the discovery of the point and its use and how the point actually was a crossroads for various civilizations, various cultures, a cultural crossroads.
Right. I mean, this is in a history that starts in 1673 with Marquette and Joliet. This was a landmark for millennia, right?
Exactly, yes.
Yes. And so people have access to the grounds even if the lighthouse is not open?
It is a public park.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Open 365 days a year.
Okay, perfect.
Next Thanksgiving, folks, go take a walk around the lighthouse. I think I've done that before.
And you had mentioned that the lighthouse itself, the museum, is only open during...
We are seasonal because of the light tower. The light tower presents a lot of difficulties in getting people up there. The circumference on the inside is very small, so we're limited by our insurance and by the Coast Guard to taking no more than 8 people up to the light tower at any one time.
Wow.
Spiral staircase. Really
Yes, the
cool.
spiral.
Really cool.
So
spiral
put it in your calendar, folks. It's June through August.
June
is that
through
right?
September.
June through September. You have a whole extra month that you can go visit. But it's not just getting up to the tower. There are some really great exhibits that you can see. And we have a photo of some of the interior here. What are we looking at in this photo, Don?
This is the main interpretive gallery, as I call it. And here you get a chance to see a fantastic model that was donated by the Shed Aquarium. I was fortunate to be able to be guest curator of an exhibit on lighthouses at the Shed Aquarium. And when that exhibit was taken down, the Shed Aquarium people were very kind in donating some of the artifacts to our efforts at Grosse Point to enhance the exhibits and the interpretation of what we have there.
And I totally recommend, and I've many times brought friends around the outside of the lighthouse to see the panels that you have up, but it is so worth it in the summer when you can to get inside the lighthouse too. There aren't too many places that you can do that in Illinois, right?
Not in Illinois. not so far.
Not in Illinois. So is the light still functional? I mean, is it still for navigation and protection?
It's a very good question. Yeah, well, the Grosse Point Lighthouse is still listed on the Coast Guard registers as a private aid to navigation.
Okay.
So if anything happens to the light, if it goes out, I get a call from the Coast Guard. I have to check out what may be the reason for it
Get
being
your oil
out.
lamp and
That
climb
is
the
a
stairs.
difference in our different historical responsibilities as stewards of artifacts.
That's correct.
The Coast Guard never has to call me.
It's the biggest artifact I've ever had to deal with.
And we have a beautiful photo.
Quite a legacy.
Yeah.
I
Beyond
gotta
all
tell
the
you.
history of this is a beautiful lighthouse.
It is.
I mean, look at that photo.
Well, it speaks for itself. You see the Fresnel lens up at the top. That would probably, am I talking about the Fresnel lens constructed in 1850 in France by a lens maker by the name of Henry Lepeau here, if you want to Americanize it. And it's a very unique piece of technology. It's the only second order Fresnel lens left on the Great Lakes that's in operation.
Wow.
There are others that have been taken down and are on exhibit, but this is the only one that is still being used. So during the course of a visit, weather permitting, you do get to see the Fresnel lens up at the top.
So kids at home, go Google Fresnel lens. Check it out. Those are some prisms.
Now, people should definitely come visit the lighthouse. That starts in June. In the meantime, you tell the folks at home what that website address is that they should go to?
It's simply grossepointlighthouse.net, and I highly recommend, even during season, that you look at the website, Not just the pictures, but read. It's got a lot of information, and I think it'll help everybody with people that would have that information in
And-
terms of parking and all of that.
In the meantime, if you want to get any of your background maritime history to help with the context of this incredible landmark and structure before you visit the lighthouse, you can always come visit the Chicago Maritime Museum down at the Bridgeport Arts Center. We're open Tuesday through Sunday, 10 to 4, and our website, chicagomaritimemuseum.org, is always open. Don, thank you so much. This was
Great.
wonderful.
It was
Thank you
great.
for having me once again.
So happy to have you. Thank you.